Here is the infamous Lakewood brace-bladed box fan. This is the second one that I have of these, of the brace blade variant. The first one I found was a rather unusual transition model that still had the shaded pole Macmillan motor. This is the more common one that has the Lakewood branded PSC motor. I don't know who actually made these things. I'm sure somebody out there knows, maybe Tori knows. So this has to be the most hated box fan among collectors. And I really don't quite understand why. So we're going to try to take as objective and unbiased a look as possible in this video to really get a good handle on how bad this actually is, because I think it's not that bad, and we're going to go through why. So I have used these before. These were made in the early to mid 2000s. Lakewood finally closed up around 2008, I believe. So these were made up until then, probably, and the patents got sold off to Holmes or Cam Air or whatever the parent company is that makes Holmes and Aerospeed and some of those other cheap brand names. I suspect the reason why Lakewood eventually caved in is because at the time, in the early and mid 2000s, Lasco, through the Galaxy brand at Walmart, was able to sell the 3733, or I guess the Galaxy one would have been the 4733, for $10 or $12. And these, I don't believe, were ever near that low. I think these were in the $15 to $20 range. And although those are both small prices, one is nearly double the other. And then you also had, I think Massey was the brand that I saw a lot, come out with knockoffs of the HV9. And again, those are all cheaper than the Lakewood branded versions. And so Lakewood was just not able to build these things down to a point where they could sell them for that cheap. And so Lakewood unfortunately went out of business. And I really do think it was because of people not wanting to pay the extra money for a better quality product. Now, interestingly enough, I would say that now I have used one of these before. My uncle has one. I've used it a number of times, so I have an idea of how these work. We're going to get into it a little bit closer now. So while I haven't used one of these personally for an extended period of time, I do know approximately how much air they move. I would argue that the earlier 3733 was probably more powerful. That was a very powerful fan. However, the Lakewood HV9 was definitely more powerful than any of the knockoffs that were ever made. The HV9 was an exceptionally powerful fan, and I remember seeing those everywhere in the 2000s, and then they slowly got phased out by the cheesy knockoffs. So the collectors hate these fans, and I can't quite pinpoint exactly why. I think it's mostly due to inaccurate perspectives, right? So this fan, if we go back to 1980, you have the 223, the P223, which was at the time the cheapest piece of junk you could buy, and that sold for $25 in the 1980s. If you take $25 in 1980 and you inflate it to today, or in 2024 as of this taping, that amount of money turns into about $100. So, and then if we go back to, let's pick 2005, $25 in 1980, inflated to 2005, works out to be around $60, more or less a couple dollars depending on what calculator you use. So we have to keep in mind that comparing this to a P223 or a P25 is not an accurate or reasonable comparison because it's two completely different product categories. An economy product of the 1980s is not the same as an economy product of the 2000s or of the 2020s, right? We'll say this was made, I don't know when exactly this was made. Does this have a date code on it? It says 101 AA. I believe the AA is the date, but I'm not sure. I don't remember how it decodes. Let's just say this was made in 2005 to get an average of the times these were made. This only cost about a third of what the P223 costs. So we really should not compare it to the P223. And of course, without even turning it on, I can tell you that it's not going to move the same amount of air as a Lakewood box fan from the 1950s. And so we shouldn't compare it to a Lakewood box fan from the 1950s because that's not what it is. It's not even remotely the same. The question that we should be asking is, for an economy product, can somebody on a tight budget buy this and get relief from the summer? Does it serve a purpose? I think we're going to find the answer is yes. I remember in the late 2000s when I first started watching videos on YouTube, I remember seeing all sorts of videos of people bad talking about these fans. There was one video in particular I remember. I don't remember who produced it, but the guy was complaining that the fan failed. But the problem with the video and the claims was that the guy was running it in the attic, like an attic fan. And, well, of course it's going to fail under those circumstances. Just about any fan would, because most Class A motors are only rated for 140 degrees ambient temperature, and an attic can meet or exceed that on a hot sunny day with ease. You need a Class B motor for running something in an attic. So of course it's going to fail in an attic. And if you run it up against a wall like this with no air going in the motor, of course it's going to fail because it's an air over motor, right? And if you never clean it for 15 years and you let so much dust accumulate on the guard that air no longer moves through the fan, of course it's going to fail because it's an air over motor. So all of those reasons that people allegedly don't like these things are invalid because those are not reasonable expectations for the product. So this one has a handle on top. It's actually pretty sturdy. So as far as the handle is concerned, does it allow you to carry the fan? Yes, it does. The handle works. The speed control, well, the numbers don't quite line up right. 3 looks decent. 2 is like 1.5, and then it just points nowhere. So is the switch great? No, but it works. And maybe you wouldn't know what speed it's on without having actually done the activation of the switch, but it serves its purpose. This has the detachable boombox cord. It looks to be about 4 feet in length. No, more than that. 6 feet. I'd say it's a 6-foot cord. That's pretty average. I don't like that the cord comes out by the motor. I would prefer it to come out down here. Not a big deal. The only thing I can't live with is when the switch is by the motor. That's just ridiculous. This I can live with. It's an odd design choice because I would think that it would have costed more to have a plug set up here with a socket so that this can be like this as opposed to just having a wire and leads that go into a switch. I have no idea what the benefit of designing it this way was, interestingly enough, if you look down here at the bottom, there is clearly provisions for the cord to run down the frame and come out the bottom. So this particular frame must have been used across multiple different models. It's supposed to have those stinking little legs that go on the bottom. I don't have those here. I actually don't really know how durable those were in comparison to the Lasco ones. I imagine probably not that good. Here's the informations. It's model 101, 120 volts, 60 hertz, 0.68 amps, which is very little power. And it does not explicitly say made in China anywhere that I can see right now, but I'm sure it probably was. The motor says Lakewood model 101A, 0.68 amps, insulation class A. That's what I was just talking about before. Class A motor, 140 degrees maximum. Thermally protected capacitor 4 microfarads, and then it has the readout for the colors of the windings. The common is white, high is black, medium is blue, and low is red. So that's that. I didn't see a date code on there. Does the capacitor have a date code? Not that I can see. This grill design I don't quite understand. The Lasco ones I get because it's got a whole baffle mechanism on the inside that might draw air through the motor, but this, there's nothing on the inside that's funneling the air through the motor. So why do we have all this blockage here? I can only imagine the intention was that somehow this stupid ring here makes air go through there, but then why make this so dense? That's something's very sus about that design. I don't like it. It's lightweight, it's flimsy, it's a cheap economy product. That's to be expected. And then there's the brace on the blades. So this seems to be the most hated part about this fan, is that it has that little brace on the blades. And what that does is it takes the it takes the air resistance from here and transfers it to the bottom of this blade, and that keeps going around. So when the fan is running and there's air resistance against the blades don't fold under the air resistance. Now, is it stupid that the blade is made of such a thin material that the brace is required? Yeah, it is, and I understand that and I agree with that, but at least that was recognized and the brace was put in place, and the brace works. These blades do not fold when the fan is turned on. They maintain the pitch thanks to the brace. Now, unfortunately, these blade sets do seem to warp over time like the D blades were, which is really a shame. I think that we're going to find that this fan does not move anywhere near as much air as it would have when it was new. Now, I haven't worked with one of these enough to really know exactly what that is. I remember the one that my uncle has, which still works to this day, but not enough to really know exactly what the flow was like. To me, it seems like the tips of the blades are kind of like bending inwards, and so the pitch, the scoop is degrading, right? So it's not going to grab as much air. That's unfortunate. I don't know how to fix that. Some people claim that there's ways to fix that. Those people refuse to make a video on fixing it, which I don't understand why. It's very annoying to me. If you know how to fix warped plastic blades, make a stinking video that shows how to do it so that the rest of us that don't get it can learn. That's half the point of doing this, is to share information. Alright, moving on from that. Let's go ahead and turn this thing on. We got the power meter set up here. The voltage is 119.9, just went up to 120 volts on the nose. Let's go over to the amps, and we'll start it up on low. Okay, now that is totally unacceptable. Most likely that happened during transit, because this was in the bottom of the car under multiple other items. So the motor, the motor mounts might have gotten bent in, although it doesn't look like it. Maybe it's just loose on the shaft. Okay, it's kind of loose on the shaft. We might have to do something about that. Much better. Okay, so there it goes. It's running on low. My initial opinion is that it's moving a very reasonable amount of air at a very low noise level. Let's take a look at the power draw. 0.4 amps. 43.5 the watts with a power factor of 0.89. All the way across the room I can feel air. It's not impressive, but I can feel the air moving. If I was hot, this would make me feel better. And actually, it's very, very quiet. I'm very pleasantly surprised by the noise level. I do remember that these always seem to be quieter. This blade design, although it's very similar to the Lasco blade design, this blade always seemed a little quieter. Didn't have that harsh, annoying, high-frequency whirring sound that the Lasco pedal blades do. One thing that is bothering me is that I'm noticing that there's like a circle on the center of the guard, and it's not centered in the fan, or like on the blade, which is kind of stupid. Serves no functional problems. But just to me that's kind of dumb. You know what else is kind of interesting is these screws seem to be of very good quality. Now granted, the screws are screwing into a very thin piece of sheet metal, which, you know, kind of cancels out their benefit, but those screws seem to be very well made, and they're decent. They got good depth to them and everything. Those are definitely a lot nicer than the screws on the Lasco 3733. These look like actually proper machine screws. I doubt that they are. I'm sure they're coarse thread screws for grabbing the sheet metal, but they look like they're pretty well made screws. The Lasco screws are all inconsistent, and the heads are like off-center and ovular and oblong and all screwed up. I actually really like this. It's quiet and it moves decent air, and it's extremely efficient. 0.4 amps for a box fan is very low. That's even better than the 3733. Those top out at 0.8. The ones made today even. And whatever noise is there is a very pleasant sound. It almost has a little bit of like, it's very quiet, but it almost has a little bit of that choppy high velocity sound to it. Runs pretty smooth. I actually can't really feel much of a balance issue. It's not 100% perfect, but it's very good. This blade seems very thin to me, and the pitch seems very shallow. The blade on the older 101 with the Macmillan motor is much deeper than this. The medium. .47 amps, 53.8 the watts, with a power factor of 0.93. No, it doesn't move as much air as an old 223 does, but it's moving plenty of air for the noise. I can feel it's clear across the room. It's a little bit out of balance, but it's really not even shaking at all. The cabinet's staying still. It's running very smooth. And it's quiet. It's very quiet. I like quiet fans. The Hive. Alright, now we're getting some noise and now we're getting some shake. Let's take a look at the power information. 0.65 amps, 77.2 watts, with a power factor of 0.99. It is out of balance, but not by like a crazy amount. It's only shaking because the stupid cabinet's so lightweight. The cabinet's not stupid. I don't know why I said that. I guess I'm starting to get brainwashed by everybody else saying these are so stupid. I really don't think this is that stupid of a fan at all. Truth be told, 223 shakes sometimes too. They weren't all balanced. Good, pretty good breeze across the room here. It's not that loud, and it's hardly moving. I mean, it's hardly drawing any power. This does not fail to deliver at all. For 0.6 amps and for this noise level, this is solid. I don't get it. I don't know why these are so hated. Sure, they're not what they used to be, but what is? This is not at all what a box fan used to be, but it doesn't aspire to be. It costs a fraction of what box fans used to cost. It's efficient, it's super quiet, and it's fairly powerful. I don't see what the problem is. I think it's a pretty good fan.